Hello, and a very warm welcome from me and all of us at Exeter School. I'm sure that your sons and daughters are excited about taking the next steps in their educational journey with us, and we look forward to seeing them for their assessment very soon. This video is for you to watch with your children, and I hope that it's helpful to put their minds at ease and to make clear what's going to happen on the day. Please also explore the other documents and resources that we have shared with you to make sure that the assessments go really smoothly. It wasn't so long ago that my own daughter was in the same position as you as she prepared for the 11 plus assessment. I must admit that she was pretty nervous. She'd never really done anything like this before. However, she had no need to be. The assessment day went really well. Everyone was super helpful and she made friends that she's now in class with every day. So the day really helped to break the ice and get her ready for our move to Devon. Some people worry that their children might find the academic challenge too difficult, but please don't worry. Whilst we are an academically selective school, we are also a school of great character, and the intellectual virtues are just one element of what makes an excellent Exeter School education. It is true, we do have some very able pupils here, but you might be surprised to know that actually we have quite a broad spread of abilities in our pupil body. The key thing is to be enthusiastic and committed to their learning and to be determined. With this attitude, your son or daughter will go far. We're very proud of all that Exonians achieve, not just in the classroom, but also on the sports field, in their music, drama, art, service activities, outdoor adventurous activities, and the combined cadet force, and all the other things they do with such interest and vigour. We are also extremely happy and proud to see pupils doing so well compared to their baseline data. This shows just how much added value we bring to their learning, and which marks them out when they leave us and go on to their next steps. We value an individual approach delivered through exceptional pastoral care in our supportive environment, and the confidence, poise and character development that our children exhibit in their years with us. We look forward to welcoming your daughters and sons to the school for their assessment next month, and we wish them all the very best. I have my fingers crossed for them all. Good luck.
Hi, my name is Jenny Wilson and I'm the Head of English at Exeter School. I'm going to briefly talk you through what the entrance examinations 11 plus, 12 plus, 13 plus and 14 plus involve. Essentially, we're assessing reading comprehension and writing skills. Each examination paper will contain a passage to read and questions on it that explore a candidate's ability to understand explicit and implicit meanings, select details to show how a writer makes conscious choices, and to build or create effects and atmosphere. We go up in the age range, we expect more understanding, and so the extracts become more literary, and we expect the candidates to talk more about the techniques, although we do not encourage feature spotting, particularly of similes and metaphors, without understanding why those are being used. Don't just name the devices, explain the meaning and purpose. That's more important. Fundamentally, to do well in reading is to understand the text and tone, mood and atmosphere created. We're also assessing writing, and so in the second half of the paper, students are asked to compose a written piece. There is no prescriptive list of text types that they could be asked to write, but it will not be something that they have not previously encountered. For example, tasks may be to write a letter, speech, description, narrative, or something similar. We're looking for accurate writing, and we are looking for descriptive, evocative writing that is well structured. You will need to be more than one paragraph. Again, as we go up the age ranges, we look for more complexity in vocabulary, punctuation, and imagery, as well as the style used to match the understanding of purpose, form, and structure. As with most English assessment, spelling is important, as is punctuation and grammar. However, I would encourage pupils to try more adventurous and complex vocabulary and punctuation. Even if they are uncertain, it shows a willingness and an adventurousness in their style. Finally, and briefly, handwriting. We do not assess handwriting, but if the work is not legible, that is going to have an impact on marks. Hopefully, that gives you an understanding of the content of the examinations and what we are looking for here at Exeter School. I would very much encourage you to look at the guides and the past papers as well, which include sample questions. Thank you, it's been good to talk to you, and the best of luck.
Hello, my name is Mr. Matt Worthy and I'm Head of Maths here at Exeter School. I'm going to be talking to you about the maths entrance test that you'll be sitting in January. Now, most importantly, we don't want you to feel nervous about this test. The questions in the test will be of the same types in the practice test that you've probably already had a look at. Here you can see that the questions are on the left-hand side. There is space in the middle for you to do all of your working, and then the answers go on the right-hand side. If you haven't yet seen a paper like this, you can find sample papers on our website, or please ask our admissions department. Working through these questions is the best way to prepare you for the test and to help you gain familiarity with what you are likely to be up against. We ask you to take the test just so that we can make sure that you'll be okay when you get here, even if maths is not your strongest point. You might be really good at something else, like English, or a great musician, or a sports person. The head will look at the whole person, so it's not a disaster if there is an area that you're not quite as good at. But it's really useful for us to see your ability so that we can best support you in the school. Let's have a look at a typical maths problem. Firstly though, it's important to note that you'll have lots of wordy questions and lots just to get on and do type questions. So we thought it'd be quite useful for you to be able to see just what some of the questions are going to look like. But hopefully you'll see that the questions that we start off with are very much, can you do some of these basic skills? Now it's important to note that calculators must not be used. You will not get a calculator for this. So I'll start off at looking at hopefully what you'll see is one of the more relatively easy questions. Shouldn't be anything that's unfamiliar to you. You will have covered fractions a lot at primary school, and if you're doing this as part of the 12 plus or 13 plus, you would have covered them a lot at secondary school as well. Now again, a few hints and tips here. It's very, very easy when we're adding fractions to just jump in and multiply those denominators together. Remember, we do have to have a common denominator, but here I'd be looking for the fact that 10 and 15 both go into the number 30. That can make your life a little bit easier as we work it through. Now you might like working your work through linearly in the method that I've shown there so far, but you might prefer actually to write things on top of each other. So we've got 3/10 that we're adding to 7/15. I tend to write my fractions below because then I can easily show what multiplication and subtraction that I'm doing there. So to turn the 15 into 30, I'm just doubling it, and I'm going to do that to my numerator. It gives me 14. To turn the 10 into 30, I'm tripling it. So I'm going to do that to my numerator, and it makes it the number 9. Adding those together is quite manageable. 9 plus 14, 23. It's out of 30. They don't have any common factors, and so I don't need to do anything or any concerns about simplifying it. I'm left with 23 out of 30 as my answer. Looking at question B, we've got a multiplication on there. Now again, if you want to just crack on and do the multiplication straight away, that's absolutely fine. You could do 4 times 3 is 12, you could do 9 times 8 is 72. Recognise then that they're both in the 12 times table. 12 goes into 12 once, 12 goes into 72 6 times, and we can get our answer. And when we're multiplying, you might recognise that there are some common factors there that we could have cancelled in the first place. 4 and 8 are both in the 4 times table. There's 1 4 in 4 and 2 4s in 8. 9 and 3 are both in the 3 times table. There's 1 3 in 3 and there's 3 3s in 9. Automatically, therefore, my multiplication is much simpler. 1 times 1 is just 1. 3 times 2 is 6, and it gets us to the same answer. So it doesn't matter how you're doing it, as long as you get to the answer, we're happy. For division, some of you may have seen this or learnt this as keep, flip, change, where we're keeping that first fraction as it is. We're flipping that second fraction upside down, we're finding the inverse, and we're multiplying to make this sum more manageable. Now, like in part B, I'll be looking to see if I've got any common factors. The 11 and the 7 don't work for us, but the 3 and the 6 do. There's 1 3 in 3 and 2 3s in 6. So my final answer here, the 1 times the 11 will be 11. The 7 times the 2 is 14, and I get my final answer. Now again, you don't have to do that. You could have done 3 times 11 and 7 times 6, but you'll have had to have cancelled down your final fraction. By cancelling the fraction before you do the multiplication, you won't have to worry about simplifying it at the end. Now hopefully you'll see through this question paper that there are lots of questions that are easily manageable because they show you what's going on there. What I want to focus on for the next few questions is the questions that you might find more difficult because they've got lots of words and they introduce a lot more context there. Often we can break it down into much more manageable chunks. Question I want you to have a look at here involves decimals. Decimals are not scary, we just have to anticipate what's actually being used here. So Ken is putting patio tiles in his backyard. He wants to fit as many tiles in the backyard as possible, and we have that information there. Now, what we haven't been told is that he can chop these tiles up, and that's really important because it's very easy to get lost in a question like this, trying to do 6.8 meters divided by the 60 centimeters and it all going wrong because we're not recognizing that the units are changing. Notice the length of the yard are in meters, the tiles are measured in centimeters. Again, at this point, it's up to you how you work that through. You could choose to make this 680 centimeters, or you could choose to make the centimeters 0.6 meters. It does not matter as long as you are selecting the same unit to make those comparisons. So either we're looking at meters versus meters, or centimeters versus centimeters. Choose one unit and stick with it. Once we've decided on that unit, we can just see what's going on here. So I'm going to look at this in terms of centimeters. So we've got 680 centimeters, and I'm dividing that by 60 centimeters to see how many tiles are going to fit along this top part. Now, I'm not interested in remainders, so notice I'm not doing an area problem for this. I'm just working out how many tiles fit across and how many tiles fit down. Because it's a division, if you wanted to, you could write it as a fraction, because as a fraction, you'll be able to notice that we can cancel out the two zeros, and it becomes a much simpler sum. I'm looking for how many sixes go into 68. In this case, it's 11 with a remainder 2. So that means I'm going to be able to fit in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 tiles along the top. But then there's going to be a bit of a space at the end here for a remainder. We're not worried about that. We've got 11 tiles going along the top. Same idea happens for going down. If I'm looking at what's happening going down there, I've got 450 centimeters to be dividing by the 60 centimeters. Like before, we can trick ourselves to get rid of those zeros. Makes life a little bit easier. 45 divided by 6, well, I know 6 goes into 45 7 times with a remainder of 3. So I can do that as my answer. I'm going to get 7. Yes, I'm going to have a remainder for that first one. I'm not too worried about having that remainder 2. Yes, I'm going to have a remainder for my second one. I'm not too worried about that remainder 3 because I'm not cutting those tiles up. So how many tiles can he fit in his yard? I can fit 11 whole tiles going across. I can fit 7 whole tiles going down, which means my answer here is I can fit 77 tiles in my garden. The tiles cost £5.50 each. How much will it cost Ken to buy all the tiles he needs? Problem there, we've got a multiplication that we have to do, but there's a few tricks that we can do to help us out here. Try and help you with some of these points to make life a little bit easier. 5.50 times by 77 is quite a big number to do multiplication for. We can make that a little bit easier. I don't need to be multiplying with this 0. It's just in my final column. We can ignore it. 5.5 times 77 is the same as 5.50 times 77. Likewise, you might want to make your problem a little bit easier. You might want to recognise I've got one decimal place in my question and then ignore it while you're doing your calculations, because we can always put that back in later on. Now again, you might prefer column method, you might prefer Chinese method, but I'm going to do this on grid method purely because I've got a 50 and a 5, I've got a 70 and a 7, and so all I can see there is I've just got to multiply 5s and 7s. It makes life easy. 5 times 7 is 35. We're going to put a couple of zeros in there. 5 times 70 is going to give us 35 again, and there's 1 0. 50 times 7, again 35 with 1 0, 5 times 7, there's 35. And so if you're doing this as a column method, you'll have ended up with something looking like this in terms of the numbers that we have. If we add all of those together, 5 in my last column, 5 plus 5 is 10 and the 3 is 13, so I'm going to carry my 1. 5 plus 3 plus that extra 1 is going to give me 12, carry the 1. 1 plus 3 is 4. I need to remember that one decimal place I had at the beginning of my question has to go back there in the end, and so my answer here is 423.5. Now, important, also to recognise that money needs to be written properly. So money has to be written as out of 100 pennies. So it's going to be £423.50. We need to get that zero back in at the end there. Ben is recording a music CD which can take up to 80 minutes of music. The shorter songs are 5 minutes longer and the longer songs are 7 minutes long. How many of the shorter songs can Ben fit on the CD? Hopefully we'll recognise that that's a simple division question. So we're looking for how many of those 5s can go into 80. By all means you can use bus stop division, you can do chunking, it does not matter. We don't have a specified way of doing things. I personally would choose to use the bus stop method, but it's completely up to you. 5 goes into 8 once with 3 left over, 5's into 30 goes 6 times, so I know there's going to be 16 shorter songs on there. If Ben puts as many of the longer songs on the CD as he can, how much time will there be left to fill? Now this is suggesting that I'm going to have a remainder, because of course 7 doesn't go into 80 nicely. Again, you might want to use the bus stop division, or you might just be using your times tables. It does not matter. You don't have to show any working that's going on in your head, just as long as you're getting the answer right. 7 goes into the 8 once with 1 left over, it goes into 10 once and I get 3 left over, so I can see quite clearly that I'm going to fit 11 songs on there, but there are going to be 3 minutes left over at the end, which would be an issue for us. If Ben wants to completely fill the CD, how many of each type of song could he put on? Now this is where we've got to recognise that 5 is a factor of 80 and it's going to go in quite nicely. We need to turn 7 into a multiple of 5 in order for us to be able to marry these two up. And the number that for me jumps out is the number 35, because 35 is 5 times 7, which means I can be putting on 5 of those longer songs, and it means that I'm left with 45 minutes left to fill with those 5-minute songs. I can divide that by 5 and it tells me that I can put 9 songs on there in total. So if you look at these questions, you can break them down. We can see that actually this question was only involving us using some multiplication and some division. We didn't have to worry about the context. So 10 clementines weigh the same as 12 plums. 3 plums weigh the same as 30 grapes. 6 apples weigh the same as 7 clementines. If a grape weighs 5 grams, find the weight of the other items. I might start to think in terms of, well, I've got clementines and I've got plums and I've got grapes and I've got anything else going on there? Let's check that. There are apples going on there as well. So you might decide that you want to start to approach this in terms of a ratio question, and you might find that really useful, where we can see that 10 clementines are the same as 12 plums, 3 plums are the same as 30 grapes, and 6 apples are the same as 7 clementines. It allows us to start to turn some numbers into something that we can compare. Now, if I were to have a look more specifically at the plums, I can turn grapes to compare with my clementines because I can see that I've got a factor here, and that factor is multiplying by 4. If I do the same on the other side here, I can then compare my clementines to grapes. The 10 clementines is 120 grapes. That might be useful, it might not be, we'll see later on. But the issue is, I've got to then try and compare this all in terms of grapes and the other items I've got going on there. And so we might want to see, how does this actually match up? And so if we're going to make everything into the same number, we could go through down here, recognise 10 and 7 both go into 70, so I'm going to be looking at 70 clementines. To get from the 7 to 70 was times 10, so my apples times 10 is going to give me 60. I've got to times the 10 by 7 to get the same answer. So 12 times 7 is going to give me 84, and 120 times 7 is a massive number, but that's okay. It's going to give us 840. Now we can see then all of these numbers are of something comparative, and we can work it that way. From that point, we could turn this into the answers that we need. Now that might look like an absolute mess to you, and that's fine. We don't have to work with ratios. It might not be something that you've covered before. It could be that you think in ratios, fantastic, and that works. We might decide, actually, we're going to do this slightly more logically and work it another way. So with questions like this, we can always work from the bottom backwards. So if a grape weighs 5 grams, let's start off with that, because the only thing so far that told us about grapes was this sentence here. 30 grapes are 5 grams. I've got 3 plums is equal to 30 grapes, which is hopefully telling me that 1 plum is equal to 10 grapes. We can do that by dividing by 3. Now, if I know a grape is worth 5 grams, 10 times 5 is going to be 50. So I know that 1 plum is worth 50 grams, and I can put that straight on my answer line. Once I know what a plum is, I can then work out some of the other information. I can see that I've got plums at the top with the clementines. So I'm going to look at that bit next. So 10 clementines are worth 12 plums. You might decide you want to simplify that. You might notice they're both in the 2 times table. So we can look at 5 clementines are equal to 6 plums, because that might make the multiplication easier. Now a plum was 50 grams, so 6 times 50 is going to give me 300. So I get 5 clementines is worth 300 grams. I want the weight of 1. I'm just going to divide both sides by 5 there, and that's going to allow me to see that 1 clementine is worth 60 grams. Now again, the way I'm showing it to you here isn't necessarily the best method. It's just the way that my brain's thinking. Your brain might think differently. As long as you're getting to answers that look like this, we're in the right place. The final one, 6 apples weigh the same as 7 clementines, so I'm going to have to do that multiplication again. So 6 apples are the same as 7 clementines, so I can do 7 times 60, which is going to give us 420. Is worth my 6 apples, divide it by 6, and I get 1 apple is therefore 70 grams, and we have our answer. But again, lots of those steps you might choose to just skip, because you recognise the sum that I've got going on here. I've got a 7 times 60 gives me an answer. I'm going to be dividing by 6, so intuitively, hopefully, I can rewrite 7 times 60 as 6 times 70, and you could have got your answer straight away. But what I'm trying to emphasise, there are lots of ways to do these questions. We are not marking you on how you do them, we're marking you on where you get to for your answer. So really importantly, I want to emphasise here that we're not marking you on how you do your working. There are lots of different ways to do these maths. All we're interested in is your answer. So how you get there, completely up to you. And so we want to see your workings, but it doesn't matter if it's not what we're anticipating. As long as you get to the answer, that's fantastic. So thank you very much for listening, and good luck with your entrance tests.
Hi, I'm Jade Seaton-Bell and I'm Team Leader of Science here at Exeter School. I'm here to talk to you about the science paper. It's an hour-long test made up of 3 20-minute sections, 1 for each science: biology, chemistry and physics. We realise that you all have different experience of science, so we try to keep the questions as general as possible, focusing on scientific thinking and practical skills more than specific topics. Most questions can be done with careful reading of the question and a little bit of general knowledge. We've tried to match the guidelines of what the national curriculum expects from you. We've also looked at what local schools study and at what pupils here at Exeter School might be studying at the same age. Our general advice to you is to read the questions carefully and to make a note on the paper if you've not studied a particular topic before. Just give it your best shot. All there is now to say is good luck and all the best for next year.